This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
All right. Hello, everybody. Today, Thursday, April 4th, 2024, at 4 p.m. So fours are wild today. This is the Easthampton Energy Advisory Committee sort of extra meeting that we've added to the calendar. I'm Jamie Paquette, the chair. I'm joined by Cassie Eckhoff remotely, John Pepe and Connie Dawson here in person, as well as Cassie Traggart, our conservation agent. We have just a pared down agenda today to focus on a couple of things. So I will get to that real quick. Anybody here that's a member of the public that would like to speak that's not part of the agenda? I don't think so. Okay, I do want to say a quick thank you to Lindsay from the mayor's office and the mayor who've been helping and sent me some nice notes here recently. So put that on the public record that I appreciate their assistance with some of the stuff, and the mayor will be coming to the next meeting later this month. But in the interest of getting through some of the stuff quickly, I'm going to flip the agenda and do the aggregation piece first. And thank you to those from Weston and Sampson who are here to talk about the climate action plan. And I hope you'll be patient, but I think this would do the shorter part up front, and then we'll have a little more extended time for the climate action plan discussion. So our folks, Rafita and Patrick from Good Energy have joined us in an effort to keep things moving forward or get things moving in a better direction, because they've been a little bogged down for various reasons, mostly me. I asked them to put together a roadmap of the next steps in the process and kind of who would own each of those, whether it's them or us or somebody else from the city staff that would need to help with this. So they've helpfully put that together and share that with the committee beforehand. Do that, but Patrick and Rafita, do you all want to take us through that particular, give us an update from your side?
Yeah, that sounds good, and we'll try to keep it tight so you can move on to the rest of the agenda. Should I share my screen, or it would just be the document that I'm going to talk through on the roadmap? So you don't have to if you guys all have it handy.
Is this what you've sent out?
This is what I sent out, but yeah, if you want to put it up on the screen, it'll just capture it in the video as well, and then
okay, great.
Maybe want to use your time with that.
Great. Okay, I'll do that. Excellent. So I'll zoom in here a little bit. So you should be seeing an Excel document. Great. I'll zoom in. There we go. Okay. So yeah, effectively, I think we're pretty close to getting this really started in earnest, which starts with the public review period. So effectively, if we were just kind of walking through this, and feel free to jump in and interrupt me anywhere with questions. We are kind of here at row number one. We've got our draft plan built up to DPU specifications and kind of ready to go. I think Rafita's built an FAQ that would kind of accompany it, so it helps people understand this dense document. And really, our next step is to pick the dates to kind of start what has to be a minimum 30-day public review period. And we are also required by law to hold a public hearing. And we generally would suggest we hold that towards the end of the public review period, so we have plenty of time to make people aware of it, for them to dig into the document. So effectively, I was thinking, the committee here could be kind of the one to make a proposal, maybe back to the city, about when the official review would start, and where and when to hold the hearing. And I kind of have a hypothetical timeline on the right there, which we could talk through. But effectively, what we would do is say we had a date identified. Let's just call it late April, for example, that we would start the public review. What we would do, Good Energy, row number 3, is we're going to create all sorts of announcements that the city could issue to announce the public review and the public hearing. So cable access TV announcement, press release, social media post for the town, legal notice in the paper. We would also get the program website ready and have it linked to from the city website. So we kind of we would lead getting all that stuff ready. And then row number 4 would actually be starting the public review period and issuing all those announcements. So that's where the city, we would just, probably Lindsay, maybe,
Yeah.
She would actually need to hit send on the press releases or on the social media posts. And the committee, as desired, if you have bandwidth, could certainly, promote those and, get it out through your channels as well. But yeah, we kind of would mostly need the city. And once that's out there, then we are, people can be submitting comments. We'll have the plan available in hard copy at City Hall. We'll have the plan available on the program website. There'll be an online form for people to submit comments. So we'll be kind of monitoring that. But what we would also do once that review is started, we would request row number 5. We'd request the official consultation meeting with the Department of Energy Resources. And that kind of usually happens in parallel with the public review. So we would make that request, and they usually say, hey, in 2 or 3 weeks, we can have that meeting with you. So we'll come back to that meeting in a minute. But so basically, the public review is open. Row number 6, we would hold the public hearing. That is where, again, you'll see the X is under the good energy. We'll plan to be there, give a short presentation about the plan, and then people can get up and give their comments, and we can provide answers. Usually, again, there's someone from city. Let me just freeze this. Someone from city staff, who's there to kind of kick it off because the city's officially hosting it, and we'd welcome as much participation as the committee wants, but you don't have to, there's not like a huge to do for you on the actual public hearing. And then what we do is, and so I just have my hypothetical timeline. If we kicked off the public review, say 22nd of April, May 14th maybe is when we hold the public hearing. Row 7, end of the 30-day review period would be May 22nd, so late May. What we would do then, there's no to do there for anybody, it just ends. Row 8, we would, look at any comments that came in, and we'd see, hey, do any changes to the plan need to be made? So we'd take the lead on that, but we would probably come back to you as the committee to say, hey, here's what we got. We think there is or isn't. And so that would be be a short, we could send you something in writing, and then we could attend a meeting if needed. But often most of the comments we get are more clarifications about what is this program, how does it work, rather than like change this bullet point. So just to give you a sense. And then hopefully around this time, also we're having the DOER consultation meeting. That would be, it's virtual. Definitely someone from the city would need to attend, as well as Good Energy. We'd welcome committee participation as well. It's a really informal kind of check-in with DOER. So there's, again, no prep that's really needed for that at all.
Is that done in person or remotely?
They've been doing them remotely for the last year or so probably remotely. And then, so then basically we'd have finished the public review. We would have kind of consulted with the committee about any changes do we think need to be made. And then I think what we'd do is, if there are any changes, we would lead the drafting. And then we bring it back to the mayor collectively for final, essentially say, thumbs up to submit to DPU. So yeah, really, I think, we could be into DPU, sometime in June.
Yeah.
And I think that's largely the path. DPU is finishing up some new guidelines right now. We're very excited about them. So compared to normal plan, review periods. There might be a little bit more to do at the end of your public review, because there might be just some little tidbits based on the new guidelines that, we need to put this little thing in, or that wasn't in there yet. But we feel very confident about moving forward with the plan as drafted. Yeah.
Okay. Number one, thank you and Rafita for putting that together. My brain has become totally spreadsheet poisoned. Like, that's all the only way I can function at this point is with organized grids. So thank you. It was really helpful for me to just see all that. And does any other members of the committee have any questions about the plan or the roadmap as currently constituted?
I'm just excited that we're so close to actually getting this to happen. Thank you so much for everything you've done.
No, I think I'd sent it again previously though, and I think I put it in the new document.
Are you talking about this?
No, I'm talking about the end of the plan.
The whole thing, yeah. I don't even know where that is. That's okay.
Okay. I'll make sure everyone has access to that. I'll make sure it's in there. All right. So
does the city council come into this?
City council doesn't.
Not.
No, they already did. They already passed the resolution in favor of it.
Happened. Okay.
And then it falls into the mayor's purview, and then she's essentially tasked us with guiding this process and getting her approval when needed. But
I remember you made those presentations to the city council.
Yeah, and then we could have gone back to the city council to get an approval for moving things forward, but we didn't. It wasn't required, and I conversed with the mayor about it, and she was fine with us just pushing forward without that. I think the city council has largely been very supportive of this anyway. So, okay. So at this point, I mean, I'm good with moving forward with this timeline. This seems like the plan period would start on April 22nd if we adhere to this, with a little bit of stuff to happen before that to prep and get materials and websites and things ready.
Yep.
So I think that is fine by me. I think, again, you just need, do we officially decide that now, or do we need the mayor to say, okay, yes, go?
I mean, I think ultimately, since the city will be pushing this stuff out, I think what might be good is maybe you send something to the mayor to say, hey, our recommendation is this. If you're good with it, then just be prepared. Make sure. I guess we probably work with Lindsay just to get all these announced. We send her all the announcements. But yeah, I think that's that's it.
Yeah, she confirmed. She handles all the press releases and a lot of the social media stuff. Again, there's a little bit of lead time, and there may be some formatting around press releases within our style book and guides and things like that. But that should be easy enough to handle. And like I said, they're up to speed on where we're at with this now, so everybody's on the same page, which is great. So I can push that with them, make sure we're good with that, and then assuming as we can start to follow this timeline.
Also, it's helpful for the staff when they do the public meetings. It says they need staff for that. I think I should be able to do it. So if that's helpful to include in the email to the mayor,
if we have the public hearing, things like that. Okay.
That's great. Do you know where they tend to do? Is there a common place?
Yes. I would say we probably would just do what we did the CAP public outreach, on the floor, and just do it that way, which it has, in-person and virtual capabilities, and it has workshop space, and it's worked out pretty well for the CAP. I feel like it's very similar.
Yeah, I think it's up where the city council meets and the school committee and all that. So we would just need to find a date for that's not already booked with another event. So I can look at the 14th. I was just saying I may have a preference for a Wednesday, the 15th versus the Tuesday. So.
Yep. Okay. So I think, maybe Jamie, coming out of this, if there's maybe an email back with us and with the city kind of saying, hey, we kind of propose this date and this kind of location, and, kind of something summarizing that, and then, and we can just kind of get to it.
Okay. Wonderful.
Sweet. Okay. Well, this is great. Yeah, we're really excited too. And I guess that's all there is to it.
All right. Well, we'll have that. You'll see that in your inbox soon with them, and we'll get that approval, and then that'll put us on the path moving forward.
Amazing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank
here?
you.
All good.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Rafita and Patrick, thanks again.
Thank you. Bye.
Yes, thanks so much. Have a great one. Bye.
Okay. You sent this as a separate.
I sent this, as a separate document. It's just from last night.
I missed it.
And I did put it in the drive. as
Yeah,
well.
after the meeting.
Oh, it's in the drive. Oh,
Yeah.
so I'm just gonna
Drive
dump
as
it into here.
Yeah, if we, after the meeting, if you want to do a little drive tutorial, I'm happy to do that. But
Yeah.
Maybe after we do.
Okay, great.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. Got that in a good place. At long last, it's feeling so much
Yeah.
better. No idea. Okay. Well, thank you to Robin and Cassidy. Thank you for joining us today as well. I know you've been working really hard on the climate action plan for many months and through several iterations and discussions with us and the general public and Cassie, who's been great about keeping us updated on where things are at and where the process is going. So I think at this point, the main thing is we want to sort of aggregate our feedback. We've been, going back and forth a little bit with it, trying to review. We started talking about it a little bit at our last meeting and just weren't going to have enough time to really get into a lot of the stuff and some of the questions and things that we have about the plan as it stands out, especially the action items, right? I think the action items are what we're going to key on, and that's been a focal point that Cassie's brought to us. Like, let's look at these. Like, are these what we agree with? Or do we want to make some changes into places where we want to put some emphasis? So to that end, and I don't know if you all have anything else or anything you want to prep us with in terms of where you're at with the process.
We're in the process right now of starting to pull details related to all these actions. So I think we're at a good spot where if there are changes to the actions, now's the time before we start finalizing some of those details that I think we'll be able to point out, or maybe through this process, if there are specific actions that you all have information about, like things you want to see included in the plan, that would be great to highlight too. Like, for example, we think EAC would be leading this action, or we think the Bees Committee might be leading this action. That kind of information would be useful.
Okay.
But if that's too much on top of the discussions already need to happen, that can occur later as well.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, part of it will happen sort of organically as we're talking through these. So, John, I know you've kind of put together the most comprehensive list of comments and thoughts so far. So do you want to start with a couple of things?
Summarize. I've got a really recalcitrant computer here. I can't even pull up my own document and try to follow along.
If you want me to pull it up on the TV here, I can do it. It's in the draft.
If you can, without, squashing everything else that people.
Yes, I've got to pull it up here too. But once again, you got to jump through the hoops with like all of this.
This should be fine though. If you all start, you can kind of start describing it and I'll get pulled up.
I get it. I actually just put the Google Drive on my desktop.
I don't know if you'll be able to cast it onto the TV.
All right. Well, while Cassie's pulling that up, I think I've got a place we can start with a couple of these things at least, because I think seeing your comments, I think Josh weighed in, in agreement with some. Well, he just mostly said he agreed with some of the stuff you had to say, and part of that is I think there's a few places where we think like the action points, the bang for the buck, so to speak, in terms of like greenhouse gas reduction or decarbonization, isn't so great with certain of those things. I think things like the e-bikes and like composting programs, those are things that we were maybe like, well, those aren't as important to us as something that might take a bigger chunk out of like the overall greenhouse gas emission, right? Again, that would get us closer to a goal, whether it's like the city goal or the state goal, things like that. So I think we wanted to maybe discuss swapping out some things like that. There's another one here about like receptacles for source separation for public events. And again, that's kind of a low, I mean, it's high visibility in some ways, but it's kind of low impact when you consider the bottom line of like emissions, things like that. So I think we would like to push a little bit more in the direction of emphasizing larger emissions reductions, like those actions that contribute more in that direction. anybody wants to disagree with that from the board or the committee.
I wonder if potentially a way to perceive it too is that the ones that are highlighted are ones that are potentially just more complicated. Not even that they are supposed to be the ones that we are prioritizing, but more that they merit more explanation through narrative of like how to achieve them. Because that might be another way to look at it instead of like, these are the ones that are highlighted because we should do them first, but rather because they're just complicated. We don't have to do it that way. It's up to you guys. But
Well, there were a couple that we casually said we don't think should be given such priority. One of them is composting at the school. And it's not that I am against that in any way, but having worked in a school,
Right.
That's a very complicated thing to actually put in place. And who's going to do it is a huge question. And so I'm just not sure that we want to commit to developing a composting program at the school as one of our high priorities.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Are they highlighted because they're high priority, or are they highlighted because they're complicated and they need more?
But the complication is like, not something we would want to put in writing.
Okay.
I think it's a great idea. I think maybe we could say something more about this, like getting the schools involved and talk about, and then giving some examples of, educating kids about, using electricity or something, but not have to say one of our a goal is composting.
Well, I think it's, this is an action list, right? And everything's going to remain on here more or less because these are all things that we do agree on. So it's really about what the emphasis is. And is the emphasis because we want to highlight because it's complicated because we want people to understand it? Is it a point of emphasis because we think it's like the most crucial part of this whole thing, or some combination of those things? Again, I think school composting, for as great as it is and all that too, in terms of like meeting climate goals, it's a relatively small building block, right, of the whole thing. And so,
how about if it's harder to do? It's probably because it's ambitious and a difficult, task, but it's also going to take a chunk out of our greenhouse gas emissions, and therefore it's worth emphasizing to me. Complicated, I don't know if that's the way to depict it. Emphasize with a detailed description something maybe that the public isn't familiar with. If it's things like, I don't think we need to talk a whole lot about, an e-bike system. I mean, they don't need to know the logistical details and all that. And say we're working on expanding it and, places and for whose access, whatever. But it's not all that incomprehensible to the average person. And so emphasizing with details, ones that are not apparent to, the average person out there in the public, I could see. But I think what Connie was getting at, we don't want to make things look complicated or go into complicated explanations because that's going to upset people and just turn them right off. I think it's hard to not say we need to give emphasis to the items that we think are going to take the biggest bite out of our greenhouse gas inventory. And that's why I, had suggested the recycling and compost related things. That's generally been seen in your inventory and in others as 3, 4, 5% of the total. So then if you're forgetting everything, that's included, everybody does it with their household waste and municipal waste. Now you're just talking about whoever shows up at events or whoever's at the school and the food waste produced at the school. You're down to an infinitesimal small percentage of impact. So I wouldn't emphasize that.
One other consideration too is not exactly complication, but how much influence does the municipality have over implementing something, right? So we don't want to have our big action items be things that are completely out of our control either. I do think there was a good mix in what they've chosen so far in terms of, things that are easier or more locally achievable versus things that require coordination or that require, a state or regional action or something like that, right? Because we don't want to de-emphasize all that stuff because that's all important too, and we're part of this larger, goal. Every town's got their own action plan. It's all built out of, what the state's trying to do and what we're trying to do nationally. But we do want to keep it focused on like things that are, that are achievable, because we don't want to come back and be like, well, we couldn't do any of this stuff because there were too many things. And I'm sorry, I know there's a hand up.
We could like go down the list and talk and more specifically about each of them at some point. Shouldn't we do
possibly? I don't. Yeah.
So let's give them a chance to react to what we've been saying.
Yeah. Sorry. Who has that?
Yeah. Can it's me? Can we just take a step back? I think for a second. I think these actions can be whatever the actions need to be. I mean, these are all just a list of actions that you would provide as interest or the community provided. But what we ultimately want to do is to identify. There's sort of two things, right? I think Jamie, you said it, like, who can really implement some of these things? And when we're trying to come up with like, what are the priority actions? It's like, well, what can the city really do and take action on? Because in some ways, this is a list of to-do items for the city. And then in other ways, it's like, here's the rally cry to everybody else in the community of what we need to do collectively. And so it's sort of the two mindsets of how to think about it. We need to give a list to the city to say, this is what you should be doing, find funding for it, implement it, integrate it into what you guys are working on. And we're going to steer the city towards being more sustainable and decarbonizing. And then on the other side of it is, what are the actions like of the city, of the people? And it's hard to put in here, some of the, like the sustainability coordinator is, I see in there on John's notes, good, but indirect and difficult to quantify. It's not going to have the biggest bang for the buck, but it's definitely going to be something the city can do. And I think it's going to be hard for us to come up with, we can quantify huge numbers by saying that all the buildings, existing and proposed buildings, are going to be net zero. But the reality of implementing them and getting there is a little more challenging. So it's, on some level, it's easy to pick off the things the city has to do first on the list, which is why you kind of see a few more of those items in here. And we were thinking that those items would have a little bit more detail. But Cassidy, is there anything you wanted to add as we were kind of coming up with these and thinking through the prioritization?
I'll add some of them, like the sustainability coordinator one. While it's not going to get you that big emissions reduction, it's an enabling action to allow for increased staff capacity to be able to do the rest of the things in this plan, or especially to do the residential and commercial pieces that are a lot of community engagement and shifting a mindset and creating a culture around net zero and sustainability in Easthampton. So when we've kind of bulleted some of these and called them out to be that longer description, we were thinking, are they ones that need a further explanation? Like, is someone going to be like, why do we need to hire more city staff? And this gives us the place to explain why that's so important, because we can do that. And we can do it in a shorter, 3-sentence description rather than a page, half-page description, if that's an action that you don't think should be called out specifically. But there were ones that we chose these either by topic because we knew that they were really important, like the stretch code being called out as a big one, because that's a big topic area that maybe some people are unfamiliar with. Like, what does this mean? And we could give that explanation in more detail. And then others to kind of show different sectors. So that's why we kind of called out the composting one, for example, if we want to show like that there's a range of these things and how, because composting can be done in a variety of ways, like we could describe some of the options there for doing so, whether that's engaging a volunteer program or hiring a third party, and including those details. But we're open to changing which ones are these priority ones that we're calling out. It's really can be up to you all on what you think needs to be called out and what you think resonates best with the community and what they need to hear. So happy to give you the time to kind of workshop that and go through these line by line if that's something that you want to kind of talk through and make those decisions and workshop it now.
I think
I have a question about. Sorry.
Well,
I just have a question about the organization. How is this going to be organized? This is not the organization that you're using, is it? Is it?
There's a plan outline we already saw.
Yeah,
we were, I think, anticipating structuring it with municipal actions to support residential actions or influence residents, and then to support businesses or influence businesses, and then the regional and state collaboration.
Okay, so that's how it'll be laid out in the plan.
So the reason I was asking is it seems like some of these things that we may not want to have highlighted, obviously we think they're important, but they could go under some of these other pieces, but they're from different parts. If you see what I mean, I don't know if they should be mentioned twice or.
Yeah, I mean, we can also consider restructuring if you prefer something like by sector. We thought this was this setup allowed you to say, like, without this additional staff capacity, it's more difficult to do all these other residential and business actions because they take so much engagement opportunity. So then you can, if you don't have that additional staff, those are actions you're going to be looking at doing later versus focusing on the municipal ones and starting to check those off with a limited staff capacity.
Okay.
So yeah, I think we can start to go through a couple of things, and starting with the sustainability coordinator is a good place, especially with the way that the lead into this meeting. You all saw on the aggregation thing, which is another action on here, and maybe one that we want to call out, although it is mostly done, as you heard. But like having a sustainability coordinator would make that process a lot easier, right? Having a person on staff who is focused on those sorts of things. I think that's
I do. I don't think it's going to happen if we don't have
right. No, I agree.
A person in charge.
It is definitely a linchpin to a lot of this. So I think we can agree that that's something that we definitely want to see happen. And it may be the first thing that needs to happen if at all possible. So I think we can agree that one there is something that we're good with.
My computer's dead.
All right, we need a larger screen in here, Cassie. Can we get a larger screen?
Double that size.
The TV in here is like 75 inches, just for the folks at home who see.
Okay, so the next one I think is also crucially important, and we were talking about this a little bit beforehand, but the climate leader community certification, right? I think you can't really have like a climate action plan without trying to do that at this point. I think
I agree.
And there's certain things that need to happen to get there, and I guess partly one of the things we were wondering is if all the steps that are needed to get the climate leader community certification, making sure they're all outlined in here, number one, or number two, like maybe some of those need to be emphasized, or they be the sort of, So I don't know, Cassie, you may have the best insight into that.
Well, so it's a little bit, this one's a little bit more confusing because there's some of the elements of getting this designation are already in here as items. One of them is fleet electrification. But what Climate Leader just wants us to do is adapt their specific EV adoption policy, which is kind of what we already have for green communities, that we just need to try for an EV first. If you can't do that, try for a hybrid. If you can't do that, then you can get an internal combustion.
That's not all.
That's not, it essentially is that mostly though. Like what else?
Beyond what we've already done, you mean?
Oh yeah, no, so they want for Climate Leader, no, different. That's a different criteria. Part of it, but I'm kind of working down a list here.
Okay.
One of the items is this fleet electrification approved policy, approved and adopted this policy. The other one is this decarbonization roadmap for municipal buildings. That's the one we're specifically talking about, the municipal buildings. Then there's the adoption of the stretch code, of the option specialized stretch code, which is another item in here,
Right.
Which is in the works.
Yes, and it's currently in the works. And then some of the other things you've already done, like have a committee such as yourself exist, have there be a commitment made by the mayor for achieving these goals by 2050. This plan would serve as that commitment potentially.
Mm-hmm.
The mayor could also just write a letter being like, this is my commitment, but it has to be by 2050. And then the other one was
Decarbonization.
Yep, I mentioned the decarbonization roadmap. And then the other one was something that we've already.
Would be a green community. Is that the other one?
Be a green community, which we are. Yes. So This one, I think it's good to call out specifically, even though there's other items that are kind of nesting inside of it that we talk about separately later. I think it's just good to emphasize like what that would do for us and what needs to be there, what ones already have done, which ones are left, and kind of they can reference each other.
And then you were explaining to me before we met that the decarbonization roadmap is very, very specific. And are we thinking we will include it in this, or we'll just say that in this that we're going to do it?
No, if we can, I'd like to include it, just so that, because if we have that on the same timeline, then we can go for the climate lead designation in July. In theory, if we have that.
And you think it's realistic? Do you think that you will be able to do it by then? Because let's be clear, who's going to do it if not you?
I'm not sure what you're talking about. We're talking about work that the consultant's working on to some extent.
Yep.
It's not just what she's got to do. It's
well, the decarbonization roadmap, though, is a lot of the green community.
It is, but this essentially in our scope of work, we were asking for decarbonization roadmap. So some of the overlap is that we're talking about coming up with numbers and interim targets, 2030, 35, 40, 45, 50 for where we're going to be and what kinds of actions we need to take to be reducing in all these different sectors.
And so that is in the works, that is like being developed right now.
So the piece that I would ask, I've been talking to Weston Sampson about having them potentially add on is creating just the decarbonization roadmap piece.
Great.
And incorporating talking about becoming a climate leader in the plan.
Great.
And all the elements related to that. But the only element that we would ask them potentially to do would be the decarbonization roadmap. Everything else, like adopting the EV policy and the opt-in stretch code, that's things that we have to do internally here. The Connie's already working on the opt-in stretch code. And then I think that the EV policy would just need to pass an update of what we already have to match what DOER wants. So that Weston Sampson, they can't do all of it. They're
not implementing the plan. They're just describing the action and who's doing what. So we're not saying that they have to, I don't know anyone saying they have to do the stretch code or do the EV plan. That's part of the actions. And
we can do the EV plan for you.
Yeah.
Well, we're already working on that with the mayor's trying to work on some kind of a lease agreement through the enterprise. It's like a whole thing. But actually, that's good to know because she wanted some kind of cost benefit analysis of that.
But as far as this decarbonization roadmap is concerned, that's really something you have to do because you're the one who has the data, right?
Well, that's what I was hoping Weston and Sampson could help us do.
Okay.
That's what we were talking about last week. It's like it's a separate piece.
Yes.
Would it build off of what's going on here? Essentially, or is it sort of in parallel?
Robin and Cassidy, I don't know.
Well, it is one of the steps that we have in here: retrofit, upgrade, and maintain all municipal buildings and systems to improve energy efficiency. You have to have a roadmap to do that. So it is implied in that, I think.
Let me have them speak to this for a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were looking at more of the requirements for it today and think it's something that we need to look into our budget and see what we have kind of left when it comes to the greenhouse gas task. We kind of started looking at those projections and the reduction timeline and all that. But this is very specific to individual municipal buildings, which we were not originally anticipating we would do that level because we want to look at the greater community since that's the larger emissions piece. But because the Mass Energy Insight data for green communities is so readily available, and we already have a bunch of that data, it should be easy to just run some additional reports to pull that data. And then the piece is really developing kind of the timeline and the approach to what are the options for each of these individual buildings. And that's the piece that we think is a little bit beyond. But if we have room in the budget, we'll be able to add on some of those pieces and could attach it as like an appendix to the climate action plan, since it's more detail than we probably need in the middle of the plan.
Oh, definitely. It should be an appendix. Yeah, okay. For sure.
Okay, so I think in terms of
we want that included.
We want the
climate leader certification.
Yes, we've
got two.
That wasn't in doubt. I mean, mostly what else was included in the climate leader thing that would dovetail with that, which I think is the next two. Right?
And by expanding that keeping that action as one of the priority ones here that has that expanded description, we're able to put in that full list of all the criteria, and we can say which have been completed and which are yet to do. So giving us that space to talk about that action further.
Okay.
Right.
And then, adopting the stretch code, the opt-in stretch code, another crucial piece of that, and definitely something that we want to emphasize.
And may I ask us a question about that? Are you, it's not on this, but you are saying who's responsible for each of these things when you actually write this up, right? And so once again, it would be this person we're going to hire. And I really would love to have that there as much as possible to reinforce we've got to hire somebody to do this. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah,
I mean, that's yes, John.
Yeah, it's also the departments that they work with, because this person is not likely to be a czar, an energy czar who snaps their fingers in departments. So it's, they coordinate with the DPW. This other person coordinates with the school department.
Mm-hmm.
They coordinate with whoever else.
But they also maintain the web page, and then that kind of stuff, all that background.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think we were planning to put the lead municipal department, or that's how we've started setting it up. So we could specify an individual, or we can leave it at the department level. So if the sustainability coordinator was in the planning department, we would write planning. And then we'd have a supporting partners box where it would be those other departments or committees and volunteer groups, whatever that might be.
But do you think that we should put the sustainability coordinator as specifically on the plan? Or
Well, I think maybe what we could do is say planning, but then when we do the part where they're talking about sustainability coordinator, explain that they would be in planning, that would probably be the person. So then it kind of does both.
Yeah.
Okay. Because then, because there might be planning might make the decision that, actually this would be better for the community development block person to pursue. Yeah. They give them a little flexibility.
Right.
But I see what you're saying.
It's also possible this person becomes a department outside of planning as well.
That's true.
And is because they're going to be in the middle of all these other things. So I wouldn't, I think in a lot of other municipalities, it is a separate, separate department.
Where did we land on that? Department or person? Sorry.
The action should be for department for right now, I think.
Okay, great. Good. I totally agree.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding here. So we want to revise the action here to, rather than hire a sustainability coordinator, is it to start a sustainability department?
Oh, no, sorry. I think we're just talking about the way you're describing who's responsible for each action, whether it's like an individual or the department. I think we can do that by department. So I think the way you would outline that. No, we should just leave the sustainability coordinator. I don't think that's for us to decide exactly right now, like how that's going to be implemented at the city level. That's going to be up to the mayor and some of the other department heads to figure out.
I haven't noticed how we're doing it, but would it make sense to not just say, let's see, what's an example? Well, we don't have a DPW board, but if there's a committee that's parallel to each of those departments, to say that department plus the, it's advisory committee or board that runs with it. So we're suggesting that it's not just paid staff, it's volunteers and direction by citizens on this thing too. I'm not sure how much alignment there is with committees.
Yeah.
There is no DPW, which is a big one of these, but
I think, for instance, the stretch code.
Sorry, what am I saying? There is one, right? Sorry.
The stretch code is a good example of that, right? Because we're meeting that right now, pushing it to the city council because there's nobody on staff to do that, right? So our committee is like the one that's assigned to for the time being. So I think that's worth noting. That's a good note. And with planning, certainly it goes beyond, right? There's a whole series of things that might come into play with the planning board and zoning board of appeals, or all different things there.
So we've included those as a separate line item in the larger expanded actions as supporting partners. Do you feel that that's a suitable place, like where it can list multiple supporting partners, or do you feel that it should be in the lead kind of line with the department and the lead outside entity?
I don't understand that question.
I don't want to get too bugged out of this. I think
We sent an example and it's in there. If you wanted to take just a look back at the example, we can do it. It's something later could follow up with, but just for logistics for us moving forward, how to start changing our formatting and being most efficient. So you'll see, yeah, here we have lead municipal department would be planning, and then there's supporting partners listed below that. So we could put lead and leave it at like just generally lead, where it's like a municipal department and a lead committee or outside group, and then have the rest of the supporting partners listed below.
Got it. How do you feel about that, John?
I don't know that it's a huge difference, but I guess my gut would be to put planning committee with planning board. You know, planning board with the planning department. I mean, planning board with the planning department, right on the same line. They're ultimately.
Some too there where the partners are all listed like together.
Oh, I see what you're saying now. Okay, that's a different format.
Yeah, there's the long format, which is what we're reviewing. Which we're reviewing now, and then there's the short format, which is the ones that wouldn't be on this highlighted list we're looking at.
Yeah, that looks okay to me to have a slightly different and not be so differentiate with the short, the simpler tasks or the less emphasized tasks versus the more emphasized tasks, where you would have two lines. You have lead and supporting, planning department, planning board.
Yeah. See how we know it.
But this is not a big, actually, it's a big enough thing for us to gnash teeth about here, but.
Yeah, so I don't want to lose sight of sort of the bigger picture of what we're trying to do here. So.
Did we say that we want to put, I'm wondering if we just agree we wanted to put number 2 in as an emphasized detailed thing? Because to me, it's very important, but it's also more, this is how we go about getting funding and access, for support, state support. It's almost like an instrumental, it's a how to do other things. It's not by so much by itself. And we're hitting almost all the elements that are in the climate leader community. We're hitting elsewhere.
Yes.
So why do we have a separate thing for climate leader?
Because we have to apply for it. You have to.
We'll do it. We'll do it anyway as a means of implementing, getting our funding for the fleets, as a means of implementing, all the other things that are associated with it.
I guess the question would be, is there a detriment to including it? Because we're not married to the number of 15 highlighted.
Yeah, it's just workload. That's all. And or people swallowing how many they're going to swallow, and that's all.
Yeah, but I think that one is important. Like, think about this as a public facing document as well, right? Now, how many people are going to sit down and read this cover to cover? Not that many, but that's a place for like education. Like most people probably don't even realize that there's a green communities program at the state level, let alone like this new one coming out, right? So it's a place to show, our participation and our following along with something that's like that comes from something bigger than us, right? And again, I think the fact that it sets us up for funding is also an important thing to call out.
And other kinds of support as well.
Other kinds of support, right? Because it's just that's a crucial piece to all this, is like one action that leverages others or leverages money, leverages funding that allows us to do other stuff. Okay, so I think we're good through the stretch code there.
These two are good.
I think so.
Well, the first 4 we've said yes to.
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll skip to the ones that are currently emphasized for the moment. I think collaborate with the housing authority to identify energy.
4, 1, 2, 3.
On the other side.
Why is this one different than, why does this not?
Okay. I see.
Collaborate with the housing authority to identify energy efficiency and HVAC retrofits, and identify grant opportunities and other financing options.
Why is it different than the larger municipal-wide building energy improvement stuff? It's a different.
Technically, the housing authority is not municipal buildings, but that's our folks from Weston and Sampson.
Are they completely independent? So, okay, that's a reason.
But why was this one chosen as a one to emphasize?
I think this one we selected because it's an opportunity where the city has maybe a little bit more authority to collaborate with the housing authority, and it has that bigger impact on residents than it's not just municipal buildings, but it is very similar in that sense. So that's kind of, I think, just a little background on like, it's another avenue to pursue for building specific retrofits.
Anybody know how many people we have in housing authority buildings? I think it's substantial.
I would think so too, but I think it's important because it kind of also gets to this environmental justice piece that we know in Easthampton is income based. So these are the folks who probably would fit into those communities, if that makes sense. So if we have something highlighting specifically trying to help them, I think that's important.
Did you have something else you're going to add?
No, nope, that was it.
Okay. Does everyone feel comfortable leaving that one in?
Yeah. I feel like that's just a small piece of establishing residential energy efficient, like the outreach and all of the, I mean, there are a lot of things that fall under the category of getting residents energy efficient and having access to things. I don't understand why that one, I mean, I get that the justice piece, but it seems sort of out of the blue to me. It seems out of context to have that be, it seems like it could be mentioned in talking about the community-wide residential energy efficiency outreach program. It's one of the things that would happen. That's just, I mean, I feel like I don't see this organized in the same way other people are. To me, I feel like this is sort of disjointed, but maybe it's just me.
All right. I don't know who raised their hand. Hold on. I don't know who raised their hand first, but Cassie.
Go, Robin. Go, Robin.
Robin. Okay. Thank you, Cassie.
Okay. I was just gonna say that from our perspective, because how this differs in some ways than a typical residential program is that these people don't own these homes, and they are very much at the will of government agencies who bring them money to update. So it's not so much that they have any power or say or feel that they can even put the priority to doing energy retrofits or any type of upgrades on their own. So part of this is that the city actually does play a role in this one piece of residential sector, which is why it's a little bit different than a typical education and outreach for typical residents.
Okay. Cassie, what was
I was just going to add that in Hatfield, the residents of the housing authority said no mini splits because they're ugly. You know, this may have some processing with the residents required that will make it a heavier lift. So I am totally supportive of it standing alone as an action item.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Also, I think the city appoints, these people aren't picked by nobody. The city's got to appoint members of the housing authority. So we have some relationship and a role there.
We don't like own the buildings, we're not municipal buildings, but we are there. Yeah, I agree.
I think there's probably ways that they get money that if the city's not supporting it and cooperating, that they don't get it, but I'm not sure about that.
Okay. So general consensus on that one. Appreciate the different points of view though. The next one that's emphasized right now is the review and revise existing zoning and policies to better enable climate-friendly zoning, which enable net zero, et cetera, et cetera. I want to read the whole thing. Does anyone have any thoughts or pro or con on having that as a point of emphasis?
Well, I mean, I think that anything we can do for zoning that will make it easier for people to have additions or new construction that is electric would be good. And I think that there are some people are trying to make some changes already so they can build small houses. And I don't really know what the issues are, but it seems to me that it's a good, I know other cities and towns have this. So I think it'd be good to keep it.
I agree. I'm wondering if this came up. I'm assuming when West and Sampson met with the departments, that planning department was one of them, and this would have been a logical thing to be talking about with you guys. And I don't know if there was a review of how much of that this has already happened. You know, boxes we can check, stuff that's been done, or stuff that's on the agenda to be working on going forward with the planning department. But it would be good to know. It sounds like we hadn't thought. I mean, I don't know. Just reading it, it sounds like, well, we haven't done any of that, but have we done some of that? And are there recommendations about where we really need to focus from Weston and Sampson in those areas, because it sounds like a gargantuan planning task.
Yeah, they've made it easier to have accessory dwelling units, which makes it a little more denser housing options, increases housing options. But I think that, yeah, part of the reason of having it highlighted here is that it gives them an opportunity to write out what maybe other towns have done that have been more on the fore than we have been. Well, I don't know. We did interview the planning department, Jamie Webb and folks there, and Jeff Bagg, and we talked about wanting there to explicitly be an item about change these kind of zoning and planning ordinances.
So they were part of that.
Yes, they were. I can't remember what she said exactly, but I know, and I don't remember where like they're at right now. They might be working on it right now. That's great, but we want to at least set a baseline here and then go above and beyond the suggestions.
And in the future, I mean, there are communities that are advocating for being able to mandate all electric construction. I mean, and you know, it would be good just to have this in there for the future if that seems to be something the city wants to do in some way.
Cassie E.
Yeah, I would be remiss as an EDIC member if I didn't say that EDIC believes that the zoning rules are way too complicated and way too long, and they're advocating for a complete rewrite.
Okay, that's good to know. Cassidy?
Yeah, I was just going to add that I think having an action pertaining to this is helpful because as more people start electrifying and run into challenges with permitting or zoning, it allows you to point to, okay, in our action plan, like we know we need to possibly revise these and like make sure that they are more encompassing and better enable this kind of work. So just wanted to make the point as like it could be used as like a future as we continue to run into issues, or if people are running into issues, we can point to this and say, yes, we have this kind of like on our radar and that we want to make sure that we're adjusting our zoning and permitting processes.
Okay. Good. All right. So again, general consensus to keeping that as a point of emphasis. Next one down is so transition the municipal fleet to plug-in hybrids and electric vehicles as vehicle types become available. I don't think we need too much debate on that one. No. Anyone want to cause a ruckus about that? Okay. I'm going to say something a little more about the next one. We did call this out. They expand access to micro-mobility options by reestablishing and investing in the bike share program, investigating the feasibility of inclusion of e-bikes. I think this is one that where some of us were like not so keen on this is like, you know, something that we think is all that important from a municipal standpoint. I would say personally, I think the one that's, you know, above it, the complete streets infrastructure, I think generally speaking, I think that is a better place to start with that.
I agree.
Because I think it's more all encompassing of the need to improve, you know, urban infrastructure and opportunities for mobility beyond just like, you know, e-bikes or a bike share programs. But that's it.
So I'll add here the decision to not include the complete streets one as a bolded option here is because Easthampton's already doing so much of that, and that's in progress work that we didn't feel it needs the extra explanation on how to go about it and those extra details because it's already things like you have the plan and you're working through it. So that was our rationale, but I agree that the complete streets could be more impactful than a micro-mobility option.
I think I'll just get my thought out real quick, and then I mean, and I don't know how much this came up when you're talking. You know, along with things like aggregation, which are already underway, right, and specialized stretch code, which we're not done with, but like trying to work through. I don't know. There may be some value even in expanding upon things that we're already doing. Right. I think especially something like that, complete streets, which is very broad and like has a lot of nitty gritty details that people probably aren't aware of, even if they're aware of, oh yeah, we're redoing Union Street, or we're having this new Main Street thing that we're trying to get people to weigh in on and contribute to. I think explaining sort of the full process behind it and like how it relates to climate or how it can relate to climate and get us to our goals, I think would have some value. But I didn't mean to cut anybody else off, Connie.
No, I agree with everything you've said. I would like to have it in there and emphasize, just because, as you say, a lot of people don't really, they may have heard of it, but they don't really understand it. It's one more opportunity to try to educate people about what it is. And as far as the electric bikes are concerned, I mean, in Easthampton, because we're so small, it doesn't work the way it's described in cities. You know, in order for me to take advantage of it, I have to walk someplace for a mile and then use the bike and then bring it right back to where I got it and then walk home. So why would I do that? It just isn't something that works out here the same way it does in a big city, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So,
I think some of the regionalization that they tried to do has some value, but I mostly agree with you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true for people who want to do that. But, yeah.
John, what was your thought?
Which one's complete streets? Is that
Right above
the blue one here?
Yeah, it's right above. It's that one there. Yeah.
Okay, so it has bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure improvements in there. I'm thinking of Cherry Street, right? The little concern I have is that it feels pie in the sky. I mean, it may be important and it may do a lot, but how many millions of dollars did it take and how many years to just get Cherry Street done? One street in the city. Do we have a capital plan that somehow covers doing this everywhere where it's needed in the city? And is that really realistic? I can't say, but I just know that it took years and a ton of money and probably the IRA money or whatever it is to have it happen. But if we're going to talk about bikes, I think it's covered there. Continue to make bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure improvements. So that's covered under that one.
Mm-hmm.
And the e-bike thing is not really under our control. That's going to be done by a private company. With maybe Northampton's going to contract with somebody else again to pick up the slack we lost with Valley Bike collapsing. But it's not under our control.
Well, so we are gonna, in theory, and this has worked before, is that we bought into the bike program. We pay to share, and all these other communities pay to share. And then Northampton was kind of like the hub, if it makes sense. So I think that's what they're trying to reestablish, just as you described.
It's just we don't have one yet.
I wonder that, I know, is it in a way, and now it's coming back in theory. Yeah. But Cherry Street, it's hard to compare in that was also a major. They didn't just do the street on the surface, it was the sewer system and this major outfall that was failing at the end of the street. So it was like, essentially, it ended up being really complicated. That was paid for through the MVP grant program. And they used the Green Infrastructure Master Plan to identify that as a priority. So that wasn't just chosen, it was like chosen as a priority through that whole process they went through, similar to the process we're going through now. But in terms of, I just wonder, and maybe Weston Simpson can speak to this, is that my understanding with the micro mobility piece is that when we did the public outreach, and maybe this is somewhere, there's another action that talks to this, something that people brought up a lot is they wanted more options. I wonder if that includes like a car share. People were talking about zip cars.
Yeah, car shares, definitely.
Other ways that the city might be
and a trolley, electric trolley.
Yeah, things like that. I don't know if that was intended to be included in the micro-mobility one that maybe isn't really captured in the Complete Streets one, because the Complete Streets one talks about reworking the streets that we have to be bike friendly and having bike lanes and more walkability and things like
connecting neighborhoods.
Yeah. So that is how I interpreted the difference between the two. One's about infrastructure and street setup, and the other one is about these additional programs to increase micro-mobility. But
I don't think a car share counts as micro-mobility.
Okay, maybe not.
I say that doesn't quite.
Okay.
So, but I do love the idea of more car share options and things like that, right? Get cars off the road by presenting other options other than having to own or lease your own car.
Well, I still would like to have what you just, the Complete Streets infrastructure one include personally, but
Cassie, do you have any thoughts or anything you want to weigh in on there?
None. Absolutely none.
Fair enough.
Let's just make a frickin' decision.
So you all want to add the Complete Street as a highlighted item?
Yeah.
And delete you want to delete the other one?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think I would de-emphasize that. Again, we don't need to get rid of it, right? I'm going to de-emphasize. I mean, not.
Still be active.
Oh yeah, it could still be.
Do you want to de-emphasize it or include it as part of the detail of what could be an action underneath the complete streets.
Yes, I love that.
I like that idea.
Yeah,
It's a
agreed.
Yeah, it's a compatible related activity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna pursue.
Yeah, I'm going to keep us moving because I'm on somewhat limited time, and I appreciate the time of our folks from Weston and Sampson joining us too. So the school bus, is that the next one? Yeah, school bus electrification. I mean, that's something that certainly we've prioritized as a committee. I don't know that we have too many dissenting voices on that one.
Good.
John, if you speak
It's
up.
a pretty big chunk of admissions. I think I came up with 450 tons of admissions from our school bus contractor in Easthampton. But
yeah, John, if you could send us those calculations so that we could include them in the greenhouse gas inventory. Since it wasn't a city-owned vehicle, we didn't have that data, but that is an important piece for the green communities, and the climate leader is showing the school-related emissions. So we'll include that.
Under the climate, I did notice under the climate leader guidance document that they were talking about contracted entities too.
Great.
Sure, I will. Okay.
Okay, so the next one is one that came up at the outset, which is developing a school composting program. Plus the next one, I'll just do these together, which is providing the receptacles for source separation of trash, recycling, and compost at public events.
Combine these?
What's that?
Can we combine these into something like reorganize trash such that more is recycled or something like that?
Or include it. There is a waste category and I just think that shouldn't be the emphasis of the waste category. That's how I feel about it.
What do you think?
Well, I mean, I don't know how to word it, but food waste is as big an issue as what we do with whether or not we recycle, as far as waste is concerned. And and that would be more realistic to talk about the schools, because the schools, it's like frightening how much food gets thrown away in schools. I don't know exactly how it should be worded, but
you want to take a more like municipal approach to compost, like as more like a citywide thing, rather than just these like public events and school composting kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead, John.
Chime in there. I would suggest we first of all, they get de-emphasized into the smaller categories, not whatever. What's the difference? I don't know the names, but the non-priority items or whatever, the less detailed. Probably combine those together in some form, and we don't need to put the wording together for them. They can figure it out, I think. But to what Cassie is suggesting, I think. I don't know if it belongs in a climate action plan, and we haven't discussed it, but I think there's a problem with the fact that the city a year and a half ago decided to change its hauler ordinance to hauler, solid waste hauler, refuse hauler ordinance under the Board of Health to eliminate a reporting requirement. So now we have no data on, I don't know if they ever collected it, but they at least had the authority a year and a half ago to collect data from every hauler in town, how many accounts they have, how much trash of various categories, recycling, composting, trash, leave the city, and where they go. I mean, so there's a place to start with, putting a strategy together. And I, as someone who's been involved in the solid waste business 35 years, I think the citizens in the city are better off. They won't like taking it on the public budget, but cost-wise, it would be cheaper and environmentally better to run one company truck through on a route through the city once, and everybody gets collected, and it's cheaper. But that's another. I would call for a study. I would call for an evaluation of that option. But it's still a small percentage of our climate inventory. Mm-hmm. Partially because we're not talking about scope 3 emissions, which are all the upstream stuff. When you start putting upstream emissions that go into the stuff we buy and then throw out, that really kicks up the contribution to a significant level for waste and recyclables. But nobody's including that. So it's a smaller item. Put them together. I would like to consider, maybe I could help word something to include later about looking at the big picture with waste management in the city and considering several neighboring towns have had, Amherst had a recent evaluation of whether to do citywide collection. Northampton did it, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 years ago.
Okay.
So we're going to think, I guess we need to think about that one a little bit more.
I could work on an action item, and I could actually help with, yeah, I'm not sure, we don't know how we're doing with the recycling and composting that's available in town. So it's hard to say how much that would help improve it. But the first part is to start collecting the data from the haulers.
Yeah. Cassidy?
Yeah, I think when we talked with the different departments, the city was a little hesitant to do any like program establishment at the city level, but I think an evaluation or a kind of study recommendation that comes out of the plan is a good first step at how do we address this, because we know there's probably more efficient ways to be doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think even just like, looking at adding composting is kind of the big hole in a lot of this stuff, right? Everyone deals with their trash and like their recycling one way or another, whether they're private or whether they bring it somewhere themselves. But like composting is not available to a lot of people or not readily available. And like it does have a big, emissions component just in terms of like it's waste that doesn't need to enter the waste stream, right? Yeah. And it's like you can keep that out of there. You can create another way to deal with it. So I would like to see something around composting and sort of like a large scale composting program.
Let me review the ordinance that they have and see what they took out and what still remains. They still may be able to require haulers to provide it, even though the city's not involved in providing the service.
Okay.
So for this piece right here of what to include, are we trying to merge these two and then de-emphasize, or leave them separate and de-emphasize?
Well, I think
these
all
are
of the
two
things,
separate things that are there right now. I think they can remain separate.
Okay.
I do think I don't think we need to go into, I don't think they need to be priority items, for the reasons that we've outlined. And then maybe we'll be able to replace them with another priority item based on kind of what John's talking about and the bigger picture waste.
So add new action items that will be prioritized.
I think that's,
because I like all of the waste pieces that are in here, it's just that I think that what to emphasize that one piece, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. Okay. Weston and Sampson, does that fly with you for the time being?
Yep. Yeah, that works with us. I think one thing to think about is when we're developing, and think about these actions is, do we want smaller things that we can check the box if we can execute easily, like that low hanging fruit, or do we want to lump more together and just have it in the plan here? So like providing receptacles at city events for composting, like could be an easy, we have a contract with one outsider contractor who comes in and picks it up for these specific events, more of a low hanging fruit piece of action, but can be lumped in with others. But it's like just kind of how you think about the plan and metrics for success later. So I just wanted to throw that out there to like keep in mind. But we don't have to preference either way if you want them to be specific or to be lumped together.
Well, I'm sorry. When I think about writing goals and then what the steps are to reach the goal, what these things are, they are steps for reducing waste, and that would be something that would get checked off. But to have that be like a separate category that gets checked off, it's just a step to me in a larger goal, in my mind.
Well, kind of what all of these are, right? It's just a matter of like what's being emphasized or what's being.
Well, some of these, to my mind, are sub goals, or steps, or actions under a larger goal. Some of these are obvious large goals, and some of them, to me, are just actions that would go under a large goal.
Keep in mind, this is the action list.
Yeah, this is the list of actions.
This is the list of all actions.
How we classify them might be subject for discussion again.
The goals are going to.
Let's just keep going. It's fine.
The goals are going to be the stuff that's laid out at the outset and elsewhere. The Cassie, E. You've muted yourself somehow.
Sorry. It's my opinion that this is super important, but I'm willing to cede to the group. And in the spirit of consensus. But if I were czar, I would combine these two into something that says adopt a more holistic municipal approach to waste management, including trash, compost, blah, blah, blah.
I agree with you.
I think that's a good start. I think that's kind of
exactly
what John's headed with that too.
Exactly what I think as well.
And it could include looking at the collection system in the city.
Yeah.
The residential collection system.
To me, it feels like there's kind of like, we have these two actions that are on there listed and highlighted. Make them not highlighted, leave them, but then add a new action that will be highlighted that's about this larger picture of the trash haulers and all those things, if that makes sense.
The word is actually, you can call it holistic, but I'd say adopt a responsible attitude, because what Easthampton does, and there aren't many cities in the state that do it, is washed hands.
Right.
Wash their hands of the waste issue.
Okay.
Okay.
Are we ready?
Yeah. So next one that's highlighted is the develop a program to regulate and discourage the removal of trees from private property, using fees to fund municipal tree planting, tree maintenance. Fortunately, I will say that this is something that kind of came up in the bees meeting the other day as well. As something that other municipalities do. Connie.
Well, my comment about this is I think we should include something about developing the city's tree canopy. We should be, there should be something about planting trees and how we go about, like Northampton has a program, I don't really know how they fund it, where they will provide trees to residents and they're very specific about how far off the street they have to be planted. And they have certain trees that they will give to them as long as they follow their requirements, and they'll help them plant them. And I mean, I think that when you walk around Easthampton, we have lost so much of our tree canopy. And I think this is a very important issue.
Yeah, and Springfield has a program too. Somebody informed us the other day. So are we good with keeping this as a prioritization?
Well, but I think it's too limited. That's what I'm saying. All it says is a program to regulate and discourage the removal of trees, but it doesn't say, oh, I'm sorry, I missed this part about planting. I so apologize.
Yeah, okay.
And fund I know it's municipal tree planting. It's not just municipal tree planting.
Right.
We need to encourage other plantings that on private property. That's what's missing from this.
That's great. Can we add a part about that then that talks about like a program that would encourage, a tree replacement thing? I think that's one of the ones that Springfield does, like a native tree replacement sort of option. That would be, go beyond just like municipal into like private property again. And that can be something that the Bees Committee can have assigned to them within the context of plan. Don, what did you want to add?
Well, I think generally improving the tree canopy is important, and the mechanisms you guys have talked about are different ways to go about it. I'm concerned about two parts of this. One is that there's going to be some people who just go ballistic when they hear the Energy Advisory Committee or the city's proposing, telling them whether they can take trees down or not on their property, or being charged fees for doing that. But related to that, some people have to take some trees down to put a whole solar array on there in their system. And it is by and large justified in terms of the carbon mitigation returns from the solar panels overall. And do we want to be taxing that? Or establishing fees on that. So that one hits a little hard, I think, in terms of a specific mechanism for doing it. I talk more about emphasize more about encouraging plantings and maintenance of trees. And anyway, that's my opinion. But
well, I think that's something that an expanded section on this would go into. And I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead, Robin.
I was going to say, why don't we just make it more broad to say to develop an urban tree program and policy for Easthampton, and then we give details such as creating guidance for best, when and why to remove a tree, or I don't know, however you want to do it. We can put like a couple of little details in there that kind of outline the program.
That sounds great.
That'd be great.
That sounds wonderful. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to try to speed run through the last couple things here real quick, but
That's when you have to leave.
what's that?
That's when you have to leave.
Pretty soon.
I had a proposal at the bottom of this, which was to give some emphasis to all the things that are regionally focused that are probably have the potential over time to eclipse anything we do municipally that are state initiatives, whether it's, funding of private EVs, greening the grid by the standard, whatever you call it again, the renewable energy standard the utilities have to deal with, all those regional and statewide things. And they had mentioned some, this isn't my version here, but yeah, they had mentioned some. But if you look at the portion of the greenhouse gas inventory that those things possibly are going to influence over time, it eclipses probably anything the municipality does. So a category that gets emphasized that is regional coordination, regional advocacy, regional state advocacy to me. And actually it's there and it's not emphasized. So I just didn't want to leave that out by looking at the next two orange ones and then you're leaving.
Right.
Okay. And the only question I have about that is, I agree with you, but who in the municipal government would do that?
That's what they would say.
Us and the mayor and the committee. I'm sorry, everybody.
Well, all the actions are going to get listed out who would do them, right? So I'm curious about that, answering that question. I guess in the interest of time, do we need to figure all that out right now?
Well, that's why I'm questioning whether it should be emphasized because of that. Like realistically, I don't know. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Do you agree that that's a big chunk of the
Absolutely, I do.
Okay, then we need to figure out who does the job of working with other municipalities and advocacy organizations to make sure that those state and federal programs do our part. Everyone's got to do it. You see that in other plans.
And I agree with you. I think the question, and Cassie's ready to go. Just quickly, the question is, are there any of those items? It sounds like you want to add more items to that, more action items potentially. So you can email me what those are, but then if you want to highlight any of those that you see there, that is the other question. Because that was kind of the meat that we're trying to get through today is which one of these do we want to be orange? And which ones do we not want to be orange? And so if there's some here that you don't think you're even on the list.
My attitude is more of a general, just like you generalized the last one.
Oh yeah.
Here's a general thrust of we need to advocate outside of our city on state and regional federal programs. And there's a bunch of things that fall under that and we can lay them out, but there's a general thrust of.
I think that makes sense. I think each of these green sections, these headers will get that. We'll get like a title page of being like, this is what this section is for. And that's where you could do that, what you're describing, I think. But also
that's what I was going to mention. It's just, we'll have a section to describe the category and the why piece of it. So if there are more broad things we want to include here, we can. And if we don't want specific actions like this at all, we can also cut them and just keep it at a broad look of regional state collaboration.
This is a pretty good list. I mean,
so let's see if we can get through this.
I would say the next big one there, the development facilitated residential education. I don't think we're going to have any argument about keeping that in there, right?
Right.
That's one, probably maybe the biggest one, but certainly one of the things.
Figure out where to get the funding for it.
Yeah, the conducting outreach to property owners on behalf of renters to inform about implementation strategies and technologies.
Yeah,
I think we're all good for that too, right? Anyone, Cassie E, feel free to chime in if you have an objection. But I think those we're mostly in agreement about. And then the last one that's emphasized right now is the educate landowners on climate smart regenerative farming, forestry, green landscaping practices, et cetera.
And then I would like to just ask whether it would make sense to also include the one about educating the commercial sector in the same way we're doing the residential sector. It's right here, the decarbonization of the commercial sector.
The one at the top of that section, develop and facilitate a commercial education installation campaign. I agree.
Or you think it's redundant because we have the residential one, but
no, I mean, I think it's, it's a separate thing.
No, I agree.
I think it's also,
I agree with that.
And then the only other question I have, and maybe it's in here and I'm missing it, is being sure that we have something about providing support and training for the municipal employees who have to actually make all these things that we're talking about happen. Is that somehow implied anywhere, or I don't know if it should be orange, but I just want to make sure that we're specifically making that statement, that we understand that we're putting tremendous pressure on the employees of the city, and we want to be sure that they have all the support that they need so they can do it. I don't know.
I agree. I think that's a good thing that we should add, should be called out somewhere, and something that the city should prioritize, like with all the department heads or whatever.
Who's the lead?
Cassidy.
Who's the lead? The mayor? Sorry, Cassidy.
Yeah, I guess.
City council.
Go ahead, Cassidy.
We could put that as like in the expanding staff capacity kind of. I think we'll probably do a page overview of capacity building and talking about that generally. So that might be a good place there to describe like that we need to provide those resources and support.
Okay. I do need to wrap up. Cassidy and Robin, anything else that you want to communicate to us right now about this, or anything that we've heard? Or
no, I think this is super helpful to hear your thoughts on these high priority or high detail actions.
Yeah, I was going to say it would be good to get, if there are any final sort of thought. Oh, it's snowing outside. Sorry. If you have any final, if you have any final thoughts, on these actions, it would be good to get those as soon as possible so that we can actually start putting all the implementation details together in completeness, so that when the next time you look at this, you'll actually be able to see like a full plan to review, and it will make a little more sense in all the context.
Yeah, that's why we added this meeting for today, to try to get more of that and get us all focused a little more on that. And Connie, I want to let you have your last.
I just want about the EV chargers. It says create and implement a data-driven plan to install them. But I want to also somehow have the wording be that we're committed to installing more chargers. It's not just that it has to be data-driven. We really need more of them. So I just would like the wording to sort of emphasize that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So we do still have the opportunity to provide more comments, like via email or through Cassie, on anything that we haven't covered here today. So if you have additional thoughts, things you'd like to do, we can still workshop that stuff, because we won't be meeting until the end of the month again. So
on Monday, I'll email a summary of what we decided today for these highlighted items, and then if you guys want to stay, I can talk to you about how to add comments and do it that way.
They don't want to wait till our next meeting for.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. We need to do this between
on the waste end of things. I'll have something written up to share with the members of the committee by early next week, Monday, Tuesday, and if people can give feedback, and if they are okay with it in a day or two, then maybe by the middle or end of next week, we'd have wording for one on waste.
Cool.
Proposed wording.
Okay. Great. Well, again, Robin, Cassidy, thank you for making time and coming in and sitting in with us today. Thanks. Definitely appreciate all your work on this.
Did it just start snowing where you are?
Yeah.
Because we've had it since midnight last night, 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
We've had like a quarter inch of slush. So it was like sleet raining all day last night, and now it just started snowing.
It switched to snow. Okay.
Where are you?
I live in Wakefield.
Oh, wow.
All right. Okay. Can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
I move we adjourn.
A motion. Do I have a second? Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Bye, you guys. Thank you for coming.
You guys go if you want, but meeting is done.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.